Hello, my name is David Jalali. I am the author of the book Terrorism, the Truth, and I would like to take this opportunity to talk to you about the pressing issue that's important to the safety and security of the world and also Americans, us in America, and that is the danger of the wars and terrorism in the world. First, I would like to say that all the video talks that I make and the speeches that I make are intended to promote peace and stability and security in the world and coexistence. It's not intended for the people who are seeking violence. It's intended to promote peace through awareness. I do believe, as um, Martin Luther King, Einstein, and Shakespeare all said that ignorance is human number one enemy. Ignorance is dark. And Einstein says there are two infinites, one universe and one human stupidity. I'm not sure about the universe, Einstein. And also, other people have said many things about the ignorance that it causes human race disaster, harm, insecurity, and waste of resources, poverty, killing, destruction, and making the world a worse place to live through violence caused by ignorance. So ignorance is very dangerous to human. That's why I'm here. I am a researcher. I have researched terrorism and world issues for the past 20 years after my retirement, and I have compiled the book Terrorism, the Truth, that's available on Amazon.com. My past videos, if you check my channel, I have plenty described terrorism as FBI and dictionary and other sources, United Nations define as use of violence for political aim, like wars, invasion, occupation, racism, and apartheid systems. These are all cause panic and hurt people, ordinary people. It kills people. And mostly all of these, if not all, are for political aims. So therefore, they're all considered terrorism. Now, we have talked about this plenty. Now, I want to dedicate this video mainly to solution of the terrorism and in the destruction, solution to the world problems. One of the issues that I would like first to tell is during pandemic right now. It is today is December 8th, I believe, December 9th, Wednesday, December 9, 2020. And I would like to give you a coronavirus statistics as of today in America to start our presentation to give you an idea what is happening in the world, at least where we live in this part of the world, North America. Coronavirus cases in America as of now are 15,618,468. Death is 293,899, and recovered are 9,096,085. That is North America at website Worldometer coronavirus status in America. Now, one other statistic I would like to give you before I proceed with the solution is that military expenditure of nations around the world, like how much money and resources are spending for destroying the world and killing one another than spending to prevent disease, destruction, eliminate hunger. This money that could be used for these to improve people's lives are used for making weapons of killing to kill one another, led by United States of America around $746 billion a year just military. That's more than almost more than I would say more than almost half of what's spent in the world, almost more, a little less than a half, more than a quarter. Compare, imagine to China, 200 billion, which is the second one in line, and the rest of the world, they spend probably another, I would say, 200 or 300 billion. Now, let me see, United States around 746, but then another couple of $100 billion for atomic, making bombs, making them stronger and bigger, and some more on supplementals, which come to $1 trillion a year spent on weapons of mass destruction by United States. And on top of that, whereas United States currently deficit is $26 trillion, and the past 10, 15 years, US has spent almost $10 trillion, 8 to 10 trillion, 8 to 10,000 billion dollars in basically West Asia, trying to claiming to fight terror, the terror that created itself. Now, I'm going to go into that in my book. I explain this in detail. But let me give you this statistics so you know where the money is going right now. The money that should be going to the save lives, it goes into killing people. And then behind US is their allies, like the allies that not elected, bunch of dictators like Saudi Arabia, bunch of racist regimes like Israel, Zionist regime, who's a one religion state based on one religion, killing and massacring and ethnic cleansing the natives who are Christian, Muslim, other religions, just because they are not, they can prove they are Jews, and they're being displaced, they're being killed, harassed, women and kids every day, and their land and their home is being taken, just like how United States was built by ethnic cleansing American Indians. No wonder U.S. supports that racism. So see, support the racism, create terrorism. And then that's $15 billion spends that country, plus US gives them billions of dollar, almost 4 billion a year in aid. Then after that is France, like 63 billion, Russia 61 billion, UK 50 billion, Germany 49, Japan 46, Korea 43, and Italy 27, Brazil 27, and some change. Australia 26.8, Canada 21.6, Turkey 19, Spain 18.2, Israel 15.9 billion, and Iran is 13.2 billion. Iran has 85 million population. Israel has only less than 7 million, but they spends more in military, plus US gives them another 5 billion a year. So Israel spent 20 billion, Iran 30 million, and Iran population is 10 times of Israel. And then Poland is 11.6. You see that these are, notice these. So what I'm trying to say, you see the proportion of military expenditure. Now, what's the world's problems right now? Is terrorism, is wars? United States is threatening. For example, let's get one example. U.S. and Iran, for example, right now is on top, is hot, and Iran is claimed to be the danger to the world peace whereas Iran only spends 13.2 billion on military with 85 million people. And Israel spends almost 20 billion, as we saw. United States spends almost 1 trillion, 1,000 billion, 746 plus 200 supplemental. And Saudi Arabia spends almost 70 billion a year. And United Arab Emirates, which is these are all United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel. These are our allies of United States. United States spends, we said, about 1 trillion. Saudi Arabia, U.S. ally, spends 70 billion. Israel, U.S. ally, spends 20 billion almost. UAE, another puppet dictator, U.S. ally, spend um, 20, almost 16 billion. And Bahrain, too, another U.S. ally puppet dictator, spends about 5 to 10 billion a year. Now, these are spend all these money, these countries, and then the Saudis are bombing Yemenis, killing Yemenis because Yemenis want to have elections. Saudi Arabia fears because it's a dictatorship and it's not a representative government. There's only a family, like one king with seven sons for the past 70 years. As one of them dies, the other one replaces, have been ruling Saudi Arabia, and anybody, women cannot drive, women cannot vote, nobody can vote. If anybody even says that we need to, maybe we should have election in Saudi Arabia, they cut his head and butcher him like Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia, Ben Salman butchered in Ankara. Turkey's embassy in Saudi embassy in Ankara, we all know about that. That was butchered because all he did is says he wished that they could have elections in Saudi Arabia like we have in United States. And a punishment, the king ordered him to be butchered, cut in pieces, and buried around town in Istanbul, Turkey, or Ankara. And that's in the news and YouTube. There are plenty of video you can watch. So, and these U.S., the thing is, what's the problem now with Iran? Consider Iran with only 13.2 billion military budget as a threat is because Iran, United States, in the past, we have to go to the roots of the problem. I want to give you the solution to this terrorism, to eliminate terrorism, and the money that is spent on war to be spent in United States to improve our lives, people's lives. Currently in US, the poverty is around in blacks communities is around 15, 16%. Hispanics about 14%, white people around 6.5, 7%. That is uh, poverty rate in United States, meaning that in the average of, let's say, about 30, 40 million Americans live under poverty in the richest country in the world, who spends $1 trillion a year building bigger bombs to destroy places and support racist regimes and puppet dictators. And then all that in the claim, under the claim of promoting freedom, human right, and democracy. So, in a sense, democracy is now, if countries like Iran have elections and they have been having elections since the revolution, like back in 53, we already talked about that. Iranian has a democratic elected government. US CIA toppled it, and they have been toppling governments who've been elected by their people since World War II, maybe over 50 country identified. They elected democratic elected government like Nicaragua, Guatemala, Chile, Iran, Egypt, and then United States with CIA, MI6, they toppled the government and put a general or a dictator in the power and claiming that we want to promote democracy and human rights. So democracy to US eyes government. So I want to say something here. When we talk about a country or name, we talk about the government, even not the whole government, part of the government who promote these policies. Because the country made up three sections, is geographic, which is the country and the people, and the government. People, geographic America is very beautiful people. American people are very beautiful, beautiful people and nice people. I've lived all of my life. They're good and bad every place, you know. And I think people are people. It's the government who does these actions, and the government of the United States does not necessarily represent the will of the people because first of all, people don't have many choices. They've already, you know, picked these people. The establishment, the system offers them a couple of two or three or four people that they come up through the system, through the corrupt system, come up, and then the people are given choices between evil and lesser of evil to choose one. But they all follow the same system. That's the system I'm talking about. That it says democracy, but democracy is what the American government wants. If the vote of the people in a country, U.S. either tries to prevent election and dictatorship, democracy by imposing a coup d'etat, put a dictator in power, or if they have election, if it's not somebody that is in favor by U.S. government, then they call that election fake or uh, fake or false or corrupt or rigged. Like Trump, you know, he's not elected, so he calls it rigged. I mean, Trump and Biden, there's not much difference. Maybe internally a little bit difference. Biden actually voted for Iraq war, and Trump was opposed to Iraq war. But they are both killing people and spend money on military and support racism, terrorism, and destruction. It's because the system supports that. So no matter who comes to the power as a president, there's not going to be much change. Now they change something internally because if the black right now riots because blacks get killed on the street by the police, they put a few black that they choose in the power, and then they exert more pressure on black community. And if somebody says something to shut them up, basically. If somebody says something, say, look at, we have a black, for example, defense guy. We have a black vice president. But that black vice president of defense is on the surface is black. Internally is not. Because he just cares for his own interests. So he's being used as a tool to oppress further the oppressed, in a sense. And that's the system I'm talking about, the corrupt system because it's not a genuine system to want to help people. They're all looking for interest, money, profits at the despair of the majority for profit for a minority chosen ones lead. Because as we see within the past year, almost 300,000 Americans officially have died, but according to the study by Boston Global and research done by MIT, they say the estimate should be 10 to 12 times of this. But let's even say what we are told that about 300,000, 290, 300,000 Americans have died within the past year. Let's say that is accurate figure. And if over 15 million people have, you know, infected with this virus, and probably a lot more going to die by the time this is over, during the same year, 40 Americans, 40 individuals make over $400 billion profit, whereas over 30 million American kids don't have enough food to eat. And, excuse me. Now, why do I say this is statistics? This is statistics can be checked online. You can go to Google, simply research this and see if I'm right or wrong. The reason I want to say that, I want to first tell you how bad the situation is. And the situation is getting worse. The poverty is going up. Unemployment is up almost around 10. They say officially is around 10%, which is not true. Let's say 6.5, 7%, which we know it is because some people, the unemployment, they run out of, they drop off the chart because as their unemployment benefit expires. You are getting the only percentage of the people unemployed who are right now currently getting unemployment benefits. Once their unemployment benefits finishes, they fall off the chart. So they won't be in that statistic anymore. And a lot of people, they finish unemployment benefits and they're still unemployed and they don't show the statistics. So actually, 10 or 15%, up to 15% unofficially Americans unemployed. That's almost 50 million, and close to 60, 80 million people don't have insurance. And a lot of companies, small businesses have closed. And, for the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be really darker what we see it right now as far as unemployment and economy. A lot of foreclosures, a lot of people are default on their homes. Tenants cannot pay their rent. We have a grim economic forecast for the next at least 3 to 5 years. But whereas we spend, by we, I mean United States government and its allies spend billions of dollars on building bigger weapons and try to promote war, assassinating, like Iranian general last year, right now Iranian scientists to basically trick Iran to get into a war. These are done by Israel, U.S. allies, and Saudi Arabia. We did support the United States to get them, Iran to make a round move so the war starts and they can destroy Iran and Turkey too, basically, because in the West Asia, Middle East, the only two countries right now that are basically in one piece and have survived the destruction in that region is Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran and Turkey. So basically, U.S. is using its allies like Saudi Arabia and Israel to persuade Iran into a war, or Turkey with Greece, so they can sell more weapons, start another big war and sell more weapons to increase, to maximize profits for the minority of chosen ones, as they say, at the despair and destruction and death of the majority. And the majority needs to wake up and don't support these war activities and killing. The reason I am saying this because I want to promote peace. And I believe peace comes through awareness. As I said many times, if anybody attacks America, I'll be volunteer to be the first one to go to Mexico or Canada or Atlantic or Pacific Ocean to the borders of America and defend my home. But going into another country on the other side of the world, like attacking Iran or Yemen or Syria or Lebanon, or having military bases, raping those people, 14-year-old girl for example, in Iraq or in Japan or in Korea, and then dividing Korea into two and try to harass those people, steal their natural resources, kill them, and create panic. That is terrorism. I am not a terrorist. I do not consider myself terrorist. Therefore, I do not agree that anybody should do that. And if people do not volunteer to go into another countries and rape and kill women, they won't be considered terrorists, and America would be safer because they won't create enemies. Right now, I'm giving solution in the process. I'm getting gradually into solution. For example, with Iran, look at Iran had 3 times within the past 100 years a revolution to have independence. In 1920, UK, British did a coup d'etat in Iran, brought the General Reza Khan and set up a dictatorship because they had a constitutional revolution and democracy. In 1953, United States did a coup d'etat again because they had another small revolution and they elected a prime minister, and the US took that out and put a Shah dictator in power. In 1979, again there was a revolution. The Shah was kicked out, US was kicked out, and the country became independent, and they started having elections. Since 1979, it's been 41 years. Iran has had over 22 elections. Every 2 years they have either parliament or presidential election, and everybody from the leader to the councilman is elected by the people in Iran. But United States calls that a theocracy, a dictatorship. But in Saudi Arabia, U.S. ally, which never had any elections, the country for the past 70 years has been ruled by one man, the king, the father, and his 7 sons, one after the other as they died. And women cannot drive. There is anybody even criticize the government, wishes election, they cut his head. United States supports that, gives him $70 billion a year arms, and has his fleet there supporting, protecting, like Bahrain, the same way, a small, tiny country, or UAE. UAE leaders, some of these workers, they bring a slave labor. They bring it from outside Bangladesh, Pakistan, India to build do their work because they only had like 400,000 population. And it's one of the guy, I guess, they were not happy with the king. They laid the guy on the sands by the beach, and with the Land Cruiser drove over his legs. They punish, torture people like that in Emirates. I saw that about 10 years ago in a newspaper, actually online. And then because they wanted to punish the guy, so nobody even dares to criticize the kings in those countries. Those are American allies who claims is promoting democracy, human rights, and freedom around the world. And Iran, which has had over 22 elections in 40 years, and everybody's elected, is considered a threat, which is not a threat. The threat, America names of the threat is democracy, actually. This is democracy. American government is a hypocrite. A hypocrite is the one who blamed the other guy for the same crime. Jesus. Jesus said that. That says, if you gotta do what you preach, do unto others as you expect them do unto you. But these people are not even Christian. They use Christianity as a tool to fool the people to gain their support to commit their crimes against humanity, like supporting a racist regime, a Zionist regime of Israel, who massacres, who ethnic cleansing, who kills women and babies because they are of different religion of the natives, and make them refugees, and then invade these neighbors. They say because they're building a Jewish state. They're not even Jews. Jews supposed to love their neighbors. Now, anybody is there out there who can tell me Israel loves his neighbors? That's it. They're all lies. They tell people to fool the fools, to get them into get their support, their vote, and then promote their racist agenda of war, destruction, and promoting terrorism. And I want that to stop. And I think if people become knowledgeable, they won't support these policies. They won't vote, and they will object to to these kind of policies. And then we have peace and security, and more Americans would live better life. We won't have poverty in America. All this money that's going to spend support dictators, racism, or wars, that money could be spent inside the United States, rebuilding our infrastructure, building our healthcare, education, and improve American lives. So in the richest country in the world, we won't have 30 some million Americans living under poverty. We won't have over 30 million kids don't have enough food to eat at night. We won't have over almost 30,000 Americans killed by violence. A lot of these violence and crimes happen because people are poor. And then we won't have all this unemployment. The life would be better. Is there anybody in America that can say the life today is better than it was 10 years ago, it was 20 years ago, it was 30 years ago? People who are my age remember 1970s? Those were golden years. Life was much better there. Big Mac was 99 cents, and gasoline was 50 cents. Everything was good. We pay right now $3 or $4 a gallon gas, but they buy the gallon every barrel for $35, or right now $40, $35. Even that if 50 gallons in a barrel, when you buy them $35, you buy in the every gallon, the 50 gallon for $35. You buying 70 cents a gallon. So why you sell it at $3 at the pump or $4 some places at pump? It costs 10 cents to transport it and turn it into gasoline. It costs about 10 cents a gallon. And let's say if you ever make 10 cents a gallon profit, then say you should sell it for 90 cents or even 10 cents, even pay tax to the government. You should sell it for $1 a gallon. Why $3 or $4 a gallon? See, that's why there is so much profit in that. And they buy this cheap because they have those puppet dictators there. they get the resources of those countries, and then cheap, and then bring them here, sell it to the Americans 3 or 4 times of that price, make a ton of profit, and then also provide them arms to those dictators to suppress their people and keep them in poverty. When there is a blowback. Right now, why the Iran has problem with United States? Because before the Iranian Revolution, even right now, through sanctions, U.S. and its allies, racist allies, basically have been sanctioning Iran for over 41 years. Don't even let medicine go into the country. Even coronavirus medicine go. They don't let them use their money to take the money inside the country to buy to develop medicine or to research to basically even buy food. Even in Pompeo come and said, if you listen to Pompeo, that gorilla, he has a gorilla, size, but his brain is smaller than chicken shit, because this guy doesn't have any brain. He comes and he puts 12 conditions on Iran, knowing doesn't know what he's talking about. He says that if you want to eat, you have to listen to us. He thinks it's during slavery, 150, 160 years ago. Even if slaves back then had the same history of the Iranians do for 150,000 years goes back it is in that country. Human existed there. And the history of 3,000, the history of science and technology before US was even there, before Europe was there, they had doctors in Iran, science and technology. They tell those people that if you want to eat, you have to listen to us. And who are us? Bunch of criminal, racist terrorists who came from Europe, basically pirates. That back then they came pirates. They came to this country and massacred the Indians, the natives, and killed all of them. And now they support racists in Israel and puppet dictators in Saudi Arabia who doesn't even let women drive. And they fighting democracy all over the world under the false claim of promoting democracy. Actually, look at, for example, in Venezuela. They Every country has the right to do their own election, elect their own representative. But United States government doesn't think so. It says only you have to elect the one we want. If Venezuelans elect Maduro, then United States doesn't like Maduro. He brings a guy in here, and Trump takes a picture with him, goes to Congress, and these Congress people, they are terrorists. A lot of them too. They're supporting terrorists. This congressman and senators. They're a bunch of racists. They are the same people who massacred Indians. Look at their statues. They have a statue of a racist who was fighting to enslave the blacks, and he's a hero. So what do you expect? These guys bring the guy from Venezuela here, and they say, "Oh, he's the president of Venezuela," meaning they don't give a shit what the Venezuelan people vote for. They say, okay, who gives you the right to decide who should be president of each country? See, that comes from the slavery, slave mastering mentality, that they think the world is a slave and they are still a slave masters. As Clint Eastwood or Dirty Harry Wells says, every man has got to know his limitation. Unfortunately, some of these idiots don't even know their limitations. Stupidity, and that's why they're going to make the world dangerous for us, for Americans. A lot of they have their bodyguard. Look at Pompeo, Trump. They have bodyguard. They have motorcade. They have Secret Service. They're protecting them from the rest of their lives. They can sit there and make policies, create wars, invade countries, promote terrorism, and then they have their own protection, sit up there and be protected. And who gets good? Because if I travel overseas or someplace, I have American passport, I get threatened, or they threaten me, or they come here and do some terrorist activity here, like 9/11, and we get killed. They make the decisions, they make the profits. The racists and the slave masters, warmongers, woman and baby killers, the terrorists, they make the decisions, they make the profits, and ordinary people like you and I, we get threatened, we get destroyed, our life get destroyed, and we have to live in fear that we're going to be hurt someday, because when the people of those countries that they put these puppet dictators in charge, like Saudi Arabia, when they revolt, one day they're going to, eventually people are going to revolt, like they did in Iran. It's a matter of time. Those people have to be ready, like in Venezuela, like in Iran. They're going to revolt, like in Cuba. They revolt and they're going to hate America and Americans, like the Iranians, in a sense. They become enemies, or consider them enemies, even so they may not be. But they remember who stole their wealth, who sold, put a dictator on top of them to oppress them for many years, for generations, and who stole their wealth to support a dictator who didn't even give them a right to elect their own representative, give them a right to drive and cut their head because they wished elections. People are going to remember that, but this is history. I mean, the winners write the history. I mean, World War II, World War One. I know history is a bunch of lies. They probably United States and the winners wrote, but a lot of people know the truth even now about World War II, World War One. So the truth will come up eventually. It's a matter of time. They said the sun doesn't stay behind the clouds forever. Eventually, it's going to come out. The truth is going to come out, and then people find out, and then they become our enemy again. The same problem right now we have with the, like, Lebanese, like Palestinians, for example, support a racist regime there, um, to occupy that, and still systematically discriminating, killing people, ethnic cleansing, and invading neighbors, occupying the neighbors, and we support them with American wars. America creates ISIS, creates Al Qaeda, Taliban. You read the history, even Clinton and Wesley Clark, even Trump says that America created, or Obama created ISIS. You see, so these are all created. Now, the solution, we need to stop supporting these activities. Let the solution is, I want to get into solution before you get tired. Let me give you the solution. Solution is in Israel, for example, one at a time I give you the solution. In Israel, I have a peaceful solution. There is nobody need to discriminate against anybody. Nobody needs to kill anybody. Nobody needs to even fire a bullet. Eliminate racism. The same thing that is in the fabric of United States. It has been for 500 years. Not by bringing, for example, like US, they put a black guy. One of the black guys, they either give him lots of money. The first slave black that was sold to the Portuguese, to whites, was sold by another black. So it's not that by putting a black on top of them and try to even beat them harder, you're going to fool some of the fools, but that's not going to eventually work. That's going to even make the situation worse. The solution is just to stop racism. Like in Israel, in Israel, the people who are born in that land, between Jordan, Egypt, and Syria and Lebanon, that stretch of land, that are right now Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank, and even Tel Aviv or Haifa, those areas that considered Israel right now, those people who live there, including Palestinian, including Christian, Jews, Muslims, or other religions, whatever they are, whoever is born on this land and whoever has been forced out, to be compensated, whoever is forced out. Either they can have the right to return to their home, or they can pay money in fair amount. United Nations sit down and agree on something so they can be compensated to be fair. When you're fair and just, then you can have peace, ultimate and sustaining peace. So in each, the solution in Israel is, first, the people who have been forced out, they should be gathered information on them, get them, either if they want to come back, let them come back to their home, or if they don't want to come back, they want money, give them some money, settle that. The people who are born in that stretch of land between Syria, Jordan, and Egypt and Lebanon, that call right now Israel, including West Bank and including Gaza, all those people who are born in that area, they come and elect their own representative, maybe every 100,000, and they elect a parliament, write a constitution, and then elect their own government, and with no preference in the religion. When you make preference based on religion, that's racism. Even according to the US laws, it's racism. I know it does not, U.S. government does not abide by it because United States government is a racist system. It is in this blood, in DNA. Even in the U.S. Constitution, I read some time ago. Even a black person is like three-quarter of a white person. And there is something Mark Twain said something interesting. I just recall, but I don't know if it is exact words. But he said something like this, that it is funny that a white man thinks he is the only civilized race. It is funny, he says. Nothing is funnier than when the white man says he's the only civilized race. Mark Twain is right. Actually, white race is the most savage race. It's not civilized. You look at what they done. They enslaved the blacks. They came to this country and wiped off a race like American Indians. Over 130 million American Indians, native Indians lived in continental U.S. when they came here, the Europeans, but they massacred all of them, and there are less than 5 million left now. I mean, 500 years ago, 130 million population, and 500 years later, today, it's only 5 million left. What happened to them? Who killed them? The white people, right? So how could they be civilized? And they say they were savages. They were not savages. Who is to decide who is savage? What's the standards? Just because you have guns, you come here and you trick them and you kill them, you're civilized and they're savages? See, that's one thing. This is double standard. Again, these are lies. This is the problem with the United States government, is full of lies and deception, deceives people. And even the news media that you see in United States is a manufacturing consent, as Noam Chomsky says. If you read the book Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, 1988, that is interesting. Even the news is like a show business. They don't give you the real news. The real news is like hundreds of thousands of people have died in Yemen by American supplied bombs, and pilots and British, American, Egyptian, and Saudi pilots who are American allies in Yemen have killed over 100,000 women and kids, and starving, famine, disease in Yemen. And you on world news, you don't hear anything about that when you watch on three channels, main channels in US. But they talk about the boyfriend of the some singer, or some dog fell into a well, helicopters come, or something that to fool the people that there is some animal gets a leg broken, somebody saves them. I mean, it's good, go save the animal, but save the human too. I mean, human voice is as valuable as animal's voice. But they show the animal to fool the people, to gain, to show that, oh, we are sympathized. But they don't, they're psychopath. They don't care. If they care, somebody care about hundreds of thousands of people that are being killed in Yemen, or about 500,000 in Syria. And they are killed with what bombs, what weapons? United States provided bombs and weapons. And then they blame the Syrian. Like now, the Iranian general was fighting ISIS. He defeated ISIS basically on the ground, because U.S. didn't have soldiers on the ground fighting ISIS. U.S. was in the air bombing. You can bomb a place forever, like you bomb North Korea, but North Korea still is there. America bombed Vietnam with B-52, Agent Orange, but Vietnamese still won the war. So you can bomb as much as you want. If you don't have the boots on the ground, you cannot win the war. And the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, he had boots on the ground. He in Iraq, Syria, he beat ISIS. In his reward, he didn't want any reward from US. US killed him because US right now is trying to revive ISIS and revive in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, and even in Azerbaijan, north of Iran, in the Caucasus, those areas, because they want to do that to prepare again the market for arms sales to make profits. And then this is what needs to stop. This is the solution. Do not support the government. People need to wake up and know what they are voting for, and demand the government to bring the troops home. Stop supporting Israel. I give you solution to Israel situation. This is no. This solution is stop racism. And everybody who lives in this land, who's born there, they can vote the government and choose a government regardless of what religion they have. They have representative from all the people in there, and that would be government. There would be peace in the Middle East, in Israel, and the country can live. Jews can live there too. There's nobody have from. Jews live all over the world. I mean, this is bullshit, really. That anybody they use the sympathy. They want to use the sympathy of the world. Basically, they say, "Oh, we massacred," in Iran, there are many thousands of Jews live there. They have their own, they're practicing their own religion. They have their own churches, Christian, Jews, even other religions. And nobody even ask you. I know if you travel in Iran, I've traveled there a few times. Nobody even asks you what religion you are. They don't care. This is in America here. Everybody cares what religion you are, what's your race, because they are racist. Only racists will ask you what's your race, because they want to make pass a judgment on you. So we need to wake up. If anybody asks me what is my religion, I tell them none of your business. What's my race? I'm human like everybody else. I'm just want to have peace and prosperity. I don't think killing other people for money is good because I'm not terrorist. But the United States government is terrorist because it promotes war. It gives arms to Saudi Arabia. Stop giving arms to Saudi Arabia. Stop supporting dictatorship around the world. Now, in Venezuela, if they have elections, they elect somebody. Okay, you sit back, let them elect somebody, then start negotiating with the representatives, see how we can get along. I'm sure we can find common areas. We can do business, making money, doing trades, other things than arms. Why do we have to always give people arms to kill people so we can have military base? You know why? Because United States does not want to deal with the majority, wants to deal with the minority because minority has a common interest with the foreign force. Because minority has a minority force, it's a smaller force, but if you get a foreign force behind it, then it can overcome the majority and work against the interest of the majority of the country. Like now in the countries who have host military, U.S. military bases, those countries are not independent because there is a force that is putting a gun into their head and telling them what to do with military, with soldiers, boots on the ground. Like in Japan or in Germany, they are not independent. Whatever decision, political decision they make, it's not free of foreign influence. So those countries are occupied. Now, Iran is not occupied. Venezuela is not occupied, basically. And if U.S. wouldn't even attack Syria, probably Syria wouldn't be occupied either. Wouldn't force Lebanon or Yemen. They want to be free. They don't want to be occupied. I think every country in the world has a right to have be free and occupied, to make a decision, elect their representative. If United States government respects that, then we won't have all these wars. Money that we spend billions of dollars on weapons, we can spend that at home and improve American lives. Now, the problem, for example, with Iran is that United States tells Iran become like Saudi Arabia. Come and buy $100 billion arms a year from us. Sell all the oil you want, as long as you give us 80 like percent of that. Like during the Shah, before the revolution, Iran, US put the Shah back in power since 1953, and Shah was giving 40% of income of oil to US, 40% to England, and the country was broke. There were like 46% live under poverty, and Iran was selling $7 billion, 7 million barrel of oil per day at $35 back in 1979, which is $350 of today, only 30 million population. But there was no universities, no electricity, no enough roads, not enough healthcare, people dying, and 400 Iranian students were studying abroad, only 200,000 were inside. But right now, there are 4 million students, university graduates, like 15 million university graduates, over 4 million students. They study inside. Iran has thousands of universities with paved road, hospitals, science and technology, space program, atomic, enrichment, atomic plants, and basically export doctors and engineers and scientists in Iran. They don't, and they also have built out all of these under 41 years of U.S. sanctions, maximum selling oil 1 to 2 million barrel of oil a day at some point at $8 a gallon or $30, 35, and doing all of this and with 85 billion population. You know why they've been able to do that? Because rather than letting a foreign country come and take over, make a military base and steal their wealth, like Saudi Arabia is paying 70 billion a year buying arms and killing his neighbor because they won election. Because if election and democracy comes to the Arabian Peninsula, all these puppet dictators will have to answer for their crimes. And the wealth of those nations would be spent on their infrastructures. And what is good for US too, for us too, that's a better way because that way majority Americans would benefit. First of all, security goes up, safety goes up for Americans. There are less Americans die because of a few handful want to make billions of dollars. Like all these American soldiers who go to Iraq, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, and get killed or crippled and come back by thousands. All their lives are ruined as a war. But if there is election in Saudi Arabia, there are elections in Emirates, in Bahrain, and their people elect their own representative, like Iran, they're going to build their own university. The country is going to improve, and the people are going to be happier. And Iran right now is under sanction. That's why there is some people may not be happy because U.S. is sanctioned. U.S. wants to pressure the people, Iranians, to revolt against their own interests. That's what they do. It's like the same thing with Venezuela, with other countries, because they don't listen to U.S. They don't let these pirates come and take over their country and steal their wealth. They defend their own interests in independent countries. And that's not to the interest of the Zionists, because Zionists, who are Zionists? Zionists necessarily are not Jews. All Zionists are not Jews, and all Jews are not Zionists. Zionists are the people who support racism, building a country based on one race, in this case, Judaism in Israel and some other place, another region. But they choose Judaism because Judaism came before Christianity, and these people claim Christianity. They want to use the majority of the world, the Christians' feelings to fool them, to support them. They said the Zionists say, okay, we want to give Jews a land. Bible says give them a land. They act like God was in real estate. God is even racist. They kill him. He gives some of his creatures based on religion land, and the other ones no. They have to be refugees. God. Even their interpretation of God is evil. So they use Judaism as the religion here for racism to win the sympathy of the majority of Christians, the majority of fools actually, the sympathy to support racism, and they make profit off of that. But if we stop racism, everybody would benefit, not just those chosen minority. Even they benefit too. They will have security too. They live in peace too. Right now there is war, terrorism. We want to stop war and terrorism. We eliminate racism. So we eliminate supporting puppet dictatorships like Saudi Arabia. Don't give them arms. Let the Saudis elect their own representative. Emirates, Bahrain, in Jordan, Egypt, in Syria, in Lebanon, they will elect. If U.S. wins there and Zionists, racist Zionists, uh, back their pressure on those countries, intervention and in those countries, then those countries want to elect their own representative. They have a representative government who comes from the people. Then U.S. can negotiate with those representative governments and then find common grounds that through peace, coexistence, share the resources among everybody. I bet you ordinary life, American life, you, me, and the ordinary people, our life would even improve, would even better than what it is right now if that happens. You know why? Because then we can do business with those people, go back and forth in peace. They won't hate American, the world won't hate Americans because right now all America goes with a bomb, planes, and missiles. goes into country and say we want to develop, promote democracy, human right, and freedom. Only idiot would believe that killing people and attacking it with bomb and missiles would improve democracy and human rights and freedom. Democracy to America is what America dictates to them once. Freedom to America government is you're free for what to eat, how to screw, and sleep. You're free to eat, screw, and sleep basically, but you're not free to think freely, to choose your own representative, to elect your own representative. Your representative has to be imposed on you by U.S. military from outside, by the Zionists, racist Zionists. That is not freedom. And then democracy and human right to the United States is like Saudi Arabia. America votes for Saudi Arabia to be on the United Nations Human Rights Council or board. Can you imagine that? A country who doesn't even let women drive cars, ride, vote. Nobody votes in the country. If somebody says we want election, the country will chop their head with a sword and cuts many heads a day for with sword. That country, America says, I'm protecting and promoting human rights and support that kind of government. America says we are supporting freedom of religion. Like Pompeo, I saw a tweet the other day. He says America stands with the freedom of religion. That guy, as I said, this guy either he's retarded, stupid himself, or he thinks the world is stupid. Then okay, if you stand with freedom of speech, I have a question from you. Why you support one religion state like Israel? Israel doesn't believe in freedom of speech. It says a Jewish state. And even with some Baha'is who live there, Israel, I got a commitment from them, they can advertise for their own religion. And Israel is making refugees out of Christian and Muslims in the country or other religions. And they do not give, Israel does not give them equal rights to the Jews, to those people. And then you support that, and then you say we're looking for freedom. That's what I'm saying. These guys are crooks. They are criminals. They are terrorists. I mean, when the state government, the people are in there, like Pompeo, to be named a few like Pompeo, like Trump. Trump is a retard. I mean, the guy is really stupid. I think he's just a toy. He's a showman. He's just used as a tool for Zionists. Use him as a tool. His popularity because people follow who are followers of Trump. They are the people who hate probably the same race that Trump hates. And the commonality with Trump, his supporters, his base, is that they are racist too, like him. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. So this is what we have now. In order to solve the problem, for example, with Iran, rather than United States keep killing its scientists, and they're gonna probably take a revenge some other way. You don't know, but they as the chess players. They have been there many times over as U.S. has been existed or Europe has existed. They know how to take care of themselves. This is not going to go. This is going the wrong way. It's just going to make more Americans unsafe. It's going to create more terrorism, more wars, more destruction, and more destruction of resources too, and make our life. But as I said, go back every 10 years. See, American life, your life, my life, American life is better right now, or what 10 years ago, or what 20 years ago, what 30 years ago. 30, 40 years ago, American life was much better than now, and it's getting worse. The next 5 years is going to be very bad. We need to stop the government from racism, from wars, from destruction, from supporting dictators such as Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Bahrain, giving them arms to kill their neighbors and promote racism, to stop interfering into the countries, especially in the West Asia. Let the countries choose their own leaders, and then America deals with the leader. Then we have peace. We will have real friends. No, we won't have a bunch of dictators as a friend, a few, and then the population as our enemy. Because if you want to win the war, you got to win the people, win the heart of the people. You can't just put one guy in power, by force, by military, by coup d'etat, and tell him, okay, oppress his own people, thousands of millions of people, so he can steal their wealth and can sell them arms to kill one another. People are not stupid. Eventually, and these are history in those countries. They write it. And then come to a point like Iran that they don't trust America. Iranians, basically, the mentality right now, the government, or truly, and the Iranians is their prosperity only exists as long as America and the Western Zionist racism it, outside their country. They don't have relation. They won't have relationship with them. So now, the other way around, if this U.S. would deal with the government of Iran, which was elected in 1953, Iran would be a friend of America right now. Americans would be working in Iran, Iranians working in America, and they would trade. Both would prosper from the relationship. But by trying to negate the will of a nation and override that by your own will, by a minority that you support, to overcome the will of the majority, you're only going to make more enemies. So you see what the solution is? Solution is in Israel is an election for everybody: Palestinian, Jews, Christians, Muslims. They vote, elect a government, secular government, representing everybody. That's the solution to Israel. You get that resolved, the relationship with Iran would automatically get resolved. Let the elections happen in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Emirates. America can do that. Let it happen there. Believe me, the peace will come to the Middle East, the prosperity. The same in Syrians. Syrians want to elect their own president. They want to elect Bashar Assad. What's U.S. business to tell you who to elect? U.S. knows more better over the Syrians what kind of government they should have because they voted. They vote. The only Arab country in the region that votes is Syria actually, but U.S. doesn't accept that. It says because you guys elect Bashar Assad, you got to elect who I say. That is not democracy. As long as this is going on, the Americans' life would be more in danger. Our resources is going to be wasted. As we see, there are going to be more wars, more Americans going to get killed, come back crippled, and the money that should spend inside America to increase our security, safety, roads, healthcare, education, that money is going to be destroyed, is going to be wasted for killing people overseas and creating more enemies for Americans to make our life unsafe. Just for a handful of people, billionaires making more profit and majority suffer. This is the way we're going right now. And the situation is going to get worse. Because I'm a researcher. I do a lot of reading. I wrote books, and 3 or 4 years since I retired, maybe some days 8 years, I do research and read. You know, and I'm graduate of California Long Beach, and 1981. So I've worked, I've been self-employed, but I've always done research and always do reading. I like that as a hobby, do research. And I have come to the conclusion that the solution to the world terrorism and the conflict with Iran is let them choose their own government and deal with the representative of the nation, the country. Do not interfere into their country. Now, Iranians, they help, the government says they help the people who want to be free in the Middle East to elect their own government. They're like the Lebanese, they want to elect their own government. But the United States said, we're going to sanction you unless you put this government in power. That is racism, and that's from outside. That's not right. It's going to blow back like Iran did. With Saudi Arabia, U.S. supports a dictator king who doesn't let them have any elections. In Syria, it tells them you can elect, you have to elect who we say US says. In Venezuela, you say, as long as this is the attitude, the situation is going to worse, the poverty is going to increase America, the American resources is going to be wasted, the safety and security is going to be degraded. Overseas, Americans are going to, their safety is going to be degraded. They're not going to be welcome. Situation is going to be worse down the road. Maybe, as I said, maybe safe and more rich for the minority few, handful who have like Trump and his base and maybe Pompeo, and Netanyahu, they have their bodyguards, their motorcade, maybe their wealth goes up and they're protected. But the ordinary people are going to get hurt. The majority is going to be hurt in danger. We want to save the majority. If we can save the majority, make the life of majority better, the world would be a safer place for everybody, and everybody would benefit through peace and coexistence. And peace and coexistence will only come through respecting other people's right, other countries' rights to elect their own government and stay out of it and let them and then deal with their elected representatives. If if America learns for a change to do that, we're going to have peace all over the world because most other countries are willing to do that. The only country who is not willing to accept that is America and its allies, because their allies are not representative governments and they're afraid of their position. And America is using their racist and dictator allies to rip off those nations, to kill them, to promote terrorism, promote war, to sell arms and steal natural resources of natives and kill them like Indians. That is the true nature of American government and the people in the government, those racists. No, they need to change, and people can make that change by voting correctly and demanding from the government to stop these wars, stop interfering into other countries, and don't believe their propaganda bullshit they give you. I mean, people, this entertainment try to basically distract people with booze, drugs, and this show business news on the TV. Get your news from various sources, and then that way you can help make better decision and through peace promote peace and stability around the world so our lives get better, especially American lives and all over the world. Okay, I hope I explained to you and you understand my solution to the terrorism and to wars and to the racism and discrimination and supporting puppet dictator is stop interfering, stop supporting them by America, and that is solution to the world's problem to make our life better. God bless everybody and enjoy holidays.